And we are back, and we just finished watching The Pod Generation from 2023, rated PG-13 with a runtime of 1 hour and 50 minutes. This comes to us from writer-director Sophie Barthes, and we caught this on Hulu. And we are welcoming back one of our favorite humans in the entire universe, Miss Angie. Hey, Miss Angie.
Hello. I adore you all. Thank you
Oh,
for
we
having
love
me.
you so much. Thank you so. This was Angie's selection. Excellent, by the way. So first question, how did you come to this movie?
I think I saw, what year did you say it was released?
2023.
So I did see it a couple years ago. And I remember when I saw it thinking, no way. And then recently was seeing news from China that they're working on robotic uteruses, more or less. I thought, oh gosh, it could be within our lifetime. So, and it made me think then. I saw it on a plane, and as I landed, just kept thinking about all the undertones because there is the main plot and then there's a lot of subplot, I think, in this movie. So I really appreciated that.
Interesting. So let's get right into it. I'm just going to read really briefly from IMDb. In a not so distant future, tech giant Pegasus offers couples the opportunity to share their pregnancies via detachable artificial wombs or pod. And so begins Rachel and Alvy's wild ride to parenthood in this brave new world. I think that's a pretty decent summation of the film. Emilia Clarke plays Rachel, I guess she's like this young executive. I'm not really sure what company she works for. And
it's like some company that handles influencers, which was also
kind of, yeah, sign of the times, right?
Sign of the times.
Yeah. And her star, it seems like, is on the rise. She's helming meetings. She's being kind of flagged by HR for bigger and better things. And then you have her husband, Alvy, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's just, I love that guy. I love watching him in anything. And in here, he plays Alvy. He's a professor of botany, and he teaches young people about plant life and stuff, which is sort of almost like a dying art in this brave new world.
Yeah, I noticed nature was almost like, oh my God, it's the new N word. People were
like
almost afraid
thing
to say the word natural.
Right. This was our first time. So I actually want to go to you first, Raymond. What did you think of the film?
I thought it was good. My only issue with it was I feel like they introduce so many things or give subtle hints to certain things, and those things aren't really expanded upon or anything like that. There's definitely, I would probably say, sinister overtones in the way all the AI is presented. It always seems like they're trying to sell you something, or they're trying to guide you in something. And it's as I mentioned before, it's funny how the AI therapist almost takes offense to the term artificial birth or something like that.
Right.
That it's not what is natural birth? What do you mean by natural? Shouldn't it just be just birth? And there's that, and could I plug myself into the baby? A therapy would be great for a baby. And all of these things, and Pegasus itself, the company, that I feel like it was setting something up. I mean, maybe it's just the way my mind is wired, but I feel like we were being set up for something where it would be like more earth-shaking than what we got. But as far as like the story that is presented, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed all the characters. I enjoyed the story, and like I said, it told a story that was happening in a world where there is definitely something going on, but these characters aren't the ones that are going to be fighting it or solving it.
So according to IMDb, this is tagged as dystopian sci-fi, satire, comedy, romance, and sci-fi. I don't know so much about the romance and comedy.
I mean, they love there were comedic elements to it,
I guess.
I think
it's more satire, though.
I would say it's definitely more satirical towards the future that we're all hurtling towards,
yes,
whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Question for you. As a parent, how did you feel about the whole birthing process presented in this story?
I mean, I could honestly see this happening. I remember when you were pregnant, you were miserable. We loved the kids. We loved having the kids, but apparently the experience is not the best. I'm sure, though, that there are aspects of it that you experienced that were just like unforgettable, and you would never give up those memories.
Right.
And that's kind of addressed in the movie a little bit, because people are still having babies the natural way in the movie. In fact, it's sort of an exclusive perk to do it this way with an artificial pod. But yeah, I could see people doing this. I could definitely see people doing it. I don't know if they would do it the way they do it in the movie. That seemed it almost seemed a little reckless.
What do you mean?
They're just carrying around this giant egg, and it's sort of like you could just drop this thing or leave it on the subway. Or I mean, people are sloppy, and like you're carrying around this developing fetus in basically a jug. Fancy jug, and they're like wearing these like ridiculous suspender things to hold it against their belly, and it's like that doesn't look secure in the slightest bit.
Yeah, it was like
a light jog, and that egg is flying out and cracking against the floor.
Right, and they mention in the story like the material of the pod is porous, so it's like. Yeah. If I'm out, I mean, everything looked sanitized, but is it? Like, I would be so freaked out. Like, I would just leave the pod at the womb center. Like, I wouldn't touch it. I would go visit it, but I wouldn't want any imperfections to land on it, any dust.
And you got it strapped to your stomach. You're eating. You're spilling coffee on it. People are sloppy.
You're right. You're right. Angie, as a woman, as a career woman, what were your impressions of Rachel? And also, can we talk about this myth of having it all? Let's start with the Rachel character, though. What did you have empathy for her? Did you understand? Did you not understand? Like, what were your first impressions of Rachel?
I thought they did a great job of kind of outlining the challenge, which is career pursuit or slowing down or making babies. And I was empathetic to her because you see her looking with envy at women with natural pregnancies. And then I thought one of the most interesting characters was her best friend from work. What was her name? Alice, who kind of coaches her to put the pod away when she accidentally bumps into the sliding door of the meeting room with her pod on her belly. I thought that was fascinating, like maternal instinct to maternal instinct, that your instinct would be to put the baby away in a closet and coach that of another woman. I thought that was fascinating. And that she graciously, sort of reluctantly, but graciously agreed to do so. I thought that was fascinating. And just the probably emotional push-pull that you would have to encourage your husband to bond. And I mean, that's interesting to have both parents being able to bond with the pod as opposed to a single carrier. But ultimately, I don't know, they address it gently in her performance reduction by 25%, when personally I perceived it to mean you're going to be distracted regardless of if you carry the baby naturally or have it in a pod, because you're bringing life into the world and a responsibility is ahead that you've never taken on before. So I appreciated that they kind of showed that it doesn't just do away with all the things that come with parenthood and the early stages of being so extremely nervous about doing the right or wrong thing. I thought they did a great job of developing her character. I felt sorry for her in the sense that she wanted this thing, but she didn't feel like she could tell Alvy because of his natural tendencies towards everything. And I think, kind of like Ray said, they introduce a lot of topics in this movie. I felt like they introduced like AI therapist, AI baby making, so to speak. And then the other interesting piece was her job creating AI assistants that the humans seemed, for the most part, annoyed with. Alvy specifically, the AI assistant for him, actually worked to kind of mess up his day by giving him burnt toast and not giving him his coffee because he didn't say please, those kinds of things. So I thought that was interesting, but like Ray said, maybe a lot thrown in to the plot.
So another thing that I thought was interesting is how you mentioned about like how Alvy gets to bond with the pod. Originally, he comes across as very resistant to this because he would like to make a baby the natural way. And so, and being a botanist, studying nature, studying plants, plant life and all that stuff, it makes sense. But yet, through the trajectory of his story, he sort of shifts a little bit and is more accepting of this new reality and creating a child in this new way. And it seemed like he was more nurturing than she was. And she's conflicted about this, which is why she brings the pod to work that day. And so what did you think of that sequence? Technically, you think of female nurturing, mothering, but here it's kind of interesting because she's sort of like a fish out of water, right? She doesn't know how to truly, she loves this baby. It's her baby, but she doesn't know how to bond with this pod. And it's almost like she's jealous of how Alvy is sort of just naturally bonded with this pod.
Mm-hmm. I actually went to the parental roles than their parents because I don't believe we meet Alvy's parents.
No.
At all in the movie, but we meet her parents who are encouraging him to sell the Shell Island property and pretty much escape from nature altogether. Well, what I thought was fascinating is as I saw her stumbling for how to bond, we don't ever see if anyone taught her how to do that. But you see that someone taught Alvy how to do that because he receives the attachment parenting book from his mom, coaching happening for connecting, and he's constantly talking about the connection of trees to earth, to the sense of community and making sure everyone stays alive. So I think he very naturally is a character that has that ability, was coached from a tiny age probably to know how to nurture living things, where she seems like she hasn't had any female role model or male role model to coach her about what is nurturing. And I actually don't know that I think that sometimes comes completely natural unless you've seen it.
Yeah, I agree. Same question for you. What did you think?
Yeah, Alvy is definitely more of the nurturer, but that goes with his personality throughout the whole film. Look at his office in the house.
Yeah.
It's basically just like a jungle almost. Plants everywhere. You can't even see the walls. And then he walks through that glass door and he's in this cold, sterile environment being harassed by Elena. Yeah, and the assistants, they're sort of like, it's completely understandable that they're annoying because they're micromanagers. They're telling you everything, and it's not even like what we have now with Alexa, where you like have to say her name. These things are just piping in. It's just like
unasked.
Yeah,
yes.
Unasked. It's when she's at work. And oh my God, that's another thing. Whoever designed these things was
the Mishas?
They're terrible.
Terrifying.
I want a giant
eyeball
staring at me all the time. Good Lord, those things were terrifying. Like something out of Lovecraft.
Yes. Well,
but anyway, yeah. So these things, they're basically criticizing everything. It's like, oh, is everything okay? Well, why? Because you're not as productive as you used to be. And nobody really wants to hear that. It's sort of like, yeah, I'm doing my job. I have other things on my mind.
But not only that, but I feel like as a worker, as part of the labor class, it's like, I can't be on 1,000% all the time. I know that this is what the employers want, but it's not sustainable.
Well, I think that's the part of the whole, everything's basically being dominated by machine intelligence. Is machine intelligence, you're not a human being, you're a number.
Right.
And you're a number that produces other numbers. And that's going back to the original thing. This is the world that, what was the main character's name? Rachel is totally comfortable in this world. So it's understandable that she is not going to be adept at being the nurturing type. For her, it's sort of like the pod is this amazing thing where I could have my cake and eat it too.
Right.
And generally it never works out as you imagine because there's a lot more that's going into it, and her body is kind of telling her that through her dreams.
Right.
Where in her dreams, she's always in this like a very natural place. She's on the beach. She's carrying a baby. She's either pregnant or holding a child in her arms. And that's there's no work. There's no AIs. There's nothing. There's not even walls anywhere. It's just everything is just completely natural. And I viewed it as basically her subconscious telling her that there's more to this than just, the Ron Popeil way of having a kid, just set it and forget it. There's more to it. And her husband, he's completely against this. To him, it's sort of like this is a separation that's completely unnatural, but he adapts because he is the more natural of the two. And he adapts in that, all right, well, this is the situation. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this as natural as I can, given the situation. And he does. I mean, he's carrying this child and bringing it to work. He's just all over it. He's sleeping with it, making sure it's fed properly. Whereas there was a point where Rachel almost found it as an annoyance and was like, well, you can get the app too, you know. But then as things progress, you see she is developing the things that we expect. Like, it's just innate. It's in the human being. It's in the DNA. She starts nesting. She's setting up the room. He's not 100% on board. He offers some, says, let's put the plant in. She's against it, but then I think she's against it because of her, I guess, technological sensibilities or future or societal. Oh, you're going to put a tree? There's dirt in there. But then after, when the baby's not there, she puts it in there because it's like it's something alive in the nursery.
And it's part of him.
And it's part of him. She even puts her hands in the dirt.
Yeah.
If you noticed.
Yeah.
Which is like something that I remember when we watched it, you mentioned that. You said, oh, there's just something about when you're doing stuff with plants, just putting your hands in the dirt.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know,
Very
there's something
soothing.
about it. So I think the film presented their journeys very well. And you have, like, as you mentioned, the satire of this world that we're all moving towards.
Yeah. Angie, towards the beginning, when Rachel is at the womb center during the tour, there's a woman, it happens very quickly, and she basically says, oh, I wish I could have done this with my first child. And so
Right.
I feel like it's funny. I think briefly, Ray and I talked about this after the film was over, but I was like, if this was an option, I may have had more than 2 kids because obviously it's not stress on the body. It's easier. I think you still go through just the anxiety of becoming a new parent. However, it's definitely easier. My question to you is, what are your thoughts? Like, if this had been a choice that you could have participated in, would you have? And also, in the future, where this does seem like an actual possibility, does that mean that alternative ways, either through natural intercourse, right, and making babies that way, do you think that'll go away?
I think I actually read an article or listened to a podcast about a future state where things like what they asked them at the womb center will be a reality. Like, do you want a girl or a boy? And with the ability to negate or isolate any chromosomal anomalies that might occur, which is fascinating to me.
Right.
That could be a future state. That part seems interesting. I liked that in the movie they did not have a preference between a boy or a girl, and the womb center found that very old-fashioned, or yes. But I will always be a cautious adapter, I think, because I'm a tiny bit of a conspiracy theorist. And so I would probably not dive in personally to something this new, predominantly for the reason that I think Alvy asks about it, which is, what material is this that a human is growing within? And the chemical side effects of that, I would probably not trust that anyone would actually know this early in a technology, and I would want to wait and see. But that's why probably I'm going to end up technical roadkill at some point, because I won't jump on board. So that's just my resistance to and lack of trust in being an early adapter of things.
Yeah. But that makes sense. I feel like also sometimes, what's that saying? If it seems too good to be true, it could possibly be, because it's like, okay, I see, I guess, the positives here, but we as a species, since the dawn of time, have just come out the old birth canal. And it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. I mean, for somebody who maybe can't have children, this is obviously going to be something where instead of doing IVF, right, which has not 100% success rate, I actually have a friend who did it several times and just never worked out. And so something like this would probably be something that they would look into, and that makes sense. However, I think also for the reasons you stated, it seems weird that we're engineering kids. And then what happens, right? Because kind of to the point that you were mentioning before about the class, the art class where the kids are quote unquote making art, where it's like really the AI that's making it for them. And it's like, it's almost like humanity then becomes cookie cutter, right? Because you're now creating quote unquote perfect children. So there's no diversity, there's no difference, there's nothing special, right? So that gets taken away in a way because you're making these kids in a very robotic, manufactured, mass produced sort of way. And so, yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, maybe Rachel and Alvy, they obviously love their child from the pod, but maybe they'll stay on Shell Island and maybe have another kid the old-fashioned way. And that would be interesting, right? To see that difference. Like, does the child that was born in the pod still get the same amount of love? Does the other one, because it's truly their own? Like, I was terrible at being pregnant. Awful. And so
you weren't terrible. I just said you had a terrible time.
I was terrible at it. I mean, it's just the body was just not into it. And listen, whatever, it's fine. But once those kids are born, obviously you'll do anything for these kids, right? You'll murder basically. And so it's interesting because I don't think that, and again, people love differently, but I feel like if one of my kids came from a pod, I would love them, but I don't know that I would love them the same as the kid that came from me internally. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels different. It just feels very different. So I thought that was interesting too, because it's like, yes, I guess if I had the means, and that's another thing, obviously this is going to be a very expensive. So you've already shut the window on a huge amount of the population that's not going to be able to afford this. So that also creates, I guess, demand, right? Because what she said to Rachel in the beginning, like, oh, we have like a 2-year waiting list for this, which is like, that's insane. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Because it's like, I don't hate science and I don't hate advancement, but kind of to Angie's point, it's like cautious adapter, I think is the right thing to say. What do you say?
This isn't something like buying the latest smartphone. There's a living thing inside of this pod. So I imagine the first people that are doing this they're really those type of people who are early adopters. They don't care. They just want the latest and greatest technology. But yeah, I think if this were to occur, a lot of people would be very hesitant. I mean, there's some high stakes here. It's almost like probably the only thing we have to equate to this now would be the self-driving in cars, because there are literally lives on the line here. It's sort of like, oh yeah, man, I got the self-driving package. You're basically a guinea pig. You're basically saying, hey, I'm a guinea pig for untested technology. So yeah, this is something that probably will happen because people will volunteer for that. As far as loving one child over the other, I think it would probably depend on the person. I imagine some people would be like, oh, well, the natural child is the one that I just felt myself naturally bonding with more. And I'm sure there will be other people who are just like, man, that natural child just wrecked me. I love the pod kid because that kid was just low maintenance, super easy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. People are different. You're not going to be able to, even after everybody is CRISPRed and homogenized and coming out of a factory, there'll still be differences.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. And plus they used her egg and his sperm, so
yeah, that was a crazy scene where the lady is basically narrating the fertilization process.
That was bizarre.
It was like, I think I told you, it's like you're having sex and David Attenborough's under the blanket, you know. The moment of penetration is about to commence.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that. Another aspect of kind of real life that's sort of satirized and just really bizarre here is Rachel and her therapist, played by
giant
Eliza, the giant eye in the wall, which is at times terrifying.
At times, it's entirely terrifying. I'm not joking when I was like, this is like Lovecraftian. It's just some huge, grotesque eyeball. And I like how they dress it up. It's like, oh, but it's in a ring of flowers.
Yes.
That makes it better.
Yes. And I'm sure they had like incense or something in the room.
It's like, seriously, of all the things that you could pick to be like the avatar of some sort of artificial intelligence, you pick this giant hideous eyeball.
Yeah, that was wild. What did you think about Eliza, the therapist?
This is where I was saying that there were a lot of like sinister undertones, because she didn't feel like a therapist. She felt like a manipulator.
I could see that.
Yeah, like a gaslighter of some kind. And it was especially creepy when they're both sitting there with the pod in between them. And she's just like, would you mind hooking me up to the pod?
I started yelling, right? I was like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like horror movie stuff.
She's like, oh, we can do therapy in utero. And I'm like, no, please tell me that these, I mean, you don't see what happens after. I'm assuming they said no, but you never know.
Yeah, Eliza was terrifying.
And Pete watched it with me, and he felt exactly the same. He kept saying, why an eyeball? Why? Why would this be the one object that you would pick?
Yeah.
So he completely thought that was wrong as well. Like, it just didn't make sense. I'm sure there's a creative reason why it made sense, but I thought the scene with Alvy and the therapist was fascinating as well.
Yes.
Kind of the same manipulation. And again, they don't show you what happens at the end of the scene, but she offers him something like a specialized package that she was selling to him. And I'm like, what is that package? Because when he walks out of the session, he doesn't seem as frustrated maybe as you think he will be because of the enraging encounter he just had with her. And so you're like, what was that? But it all felt manipulative completely. And they address it, I think, in the scene where they're touring the preschool and the womb center guide mentions singularity, which is the process by which, I guess, if I am defining this correctly, where we don't have any unique factor compared to super intelligence.
Yeah, it's when I think it's when artificial intelligence becomes self-aware.
And I feel like that was the precursor to singularity, to get into the womb, to give the therapy, to start the manipulation at that stage. And then, like that podcast I just sent you, then we're all in big trouble. I mean, it just is there are lots of layers to the movie, which I appreciate. But I will say the news that I read about the robotic womb in China that they're building is the cost is $13,000 US, which seems not enough to me.
Yeah, that
maybe
seems low. Yeah.
But anyway, so
I'm sure
I think
we'll
it's all
figure out how to
fascinating.
sell it for more than that. Probably three times as much.
Yeah. Right. And I guess the goal is to have a prototype by 2026. And I mean, technically, we have done this before with, I think there was a lamb or something that was.
Yeah, I think I read that. They grew. I think it was like a lamb. They grew a lamb in like basically a metal can of some kind.
Oh Lord.
Right.
Oh Lord.
So I don't think it's brand new, but the one thing that haunted me a little bit was the womb center guide saying that, or in that tour, the gentleman asking about his nephew that doesn't have dreams. And they dismiss that in the tour. And then the therapist dismisses dreams as anything viable as well for intelligence. That was fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with Angie. There's like a lot to unpack here. And it's interesting because I feel like, again, I don't see comedy. I see more satire. And I think that the writer-director does a really great job of fleshing out different aspects of this AI, I guess, reproductive race that's happening or programming that's probably on the horizon and how that will impact people. I think that I don't think that the director favors one or the other. I feel like she presents the story very almost like a newspaper. These are the facts. This is one person's experience with this situation, and you can draw your own conclusions about what you think. And I think that was also very, very well done here, because I don't think that my opinions about AI changed after watching this. I felt that seeing the story just made a case for what's on the horizon and what are some possibilities. People are still going to be messy. People are still going to be flawed and layered and nuanced and just human, right? Because that's who they are. But with this introduction of, I guess, making people more cookie cutter. Because even towards the end, remember when she kind of like shakes off and she's like, I want to have a home birth. I want to take this pod to Shell Island and have the baby there. When Alvy goes to talk to the woman from the womb center, she's like, no. It's in the contract. You have to bring that back because it's your baby, sure, but the pod is our property. And it's, to your point, just the whole nefariousness of the tone of that and how that's presented and the words that she says. And it's almost like, I felt like she was a robot. Like, I didn't see anything human about the womb center lady.
The womb center lady was very condescending, she definitely was giving off that sinister vibe. And everything that they said was always said with like, oh, but this will be so good.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things at the end was that the reason why they said, oh, the baby now has to stay in the womb center is like, oh, we're doing something like the pre-birth workshop or something for the baby, and you don't want to miss out on that. It's very important. And it's like, it's a freaking baby in a jug. What is this workshop? Like, to me, workshop is you're getting your hands dirty. It's this kid's floating in amniotic fluid. They're not engaging in a workshop.
Right. They're not.
But who the hell knows what else they're doing? And just the way they handled everything. Another reason why I was like, they introduced stuff that they don't really give you much of a payoff for was like at the end with the end of the birth cycle, the base stops working. And he calls up and he's like, oh, they turned off the base remotely. And it's sort of like, okay, now we're getting to the thing where it's like this evil thing. And yeah, it's an evil thing, but it's sort of like, oh, but the baby will be out before then. So let's not worry about it. And they don't have to worry about it. And then, oh, we need the birthing code. We need the code to open the pod. Nah, I'll just unscrew this thing and the baby will pop out.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, okay, you're definitely giving me like all these sinister vibes, and oh, this Pegasus is secretly an evil corporation with their weird Jeff Bezos looking CEO. And then at the end, it's just sort of like all the problems are so easily overcome, and she just dumps the pod in a box and mails it back, and that was the end. So I feel like there should have been more payoff to all of this sinister world build, but I mean, I still enjoyed the movie. I still found it an interesting look at the future, and a future that's absolutely possible.
Yeah. Given
our trajectory right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there were some dominoes that were left standing by the end of this movie.
Does this kind of snapshot of the future scare you?
I mean, in some ways, yeah, a little bit.
Because
there's going to be a point where, like, right now we're in this stage where everybody's like, oh, AI is going to be great. It's going to increase productivity. They're ignoring the fact that you're also unemploying a huge amount of people. And at some point, the whole idea is, oh, we're going to increase productivity. And by increasing productivity, we're going to increase our profits. The issue is your profits come from people paying money. And if you're unemploying everybody, where's the money coming from? So it's sort of like, has anybody really put any thought into that situation? Because if we're building stuff right now that's going to make the world this utopia where we don't have to engage in manual labor or any of that, how does that, like, your whole goal is, oh, I want to be the richest person how are you going to be the richest person on the planet when nobody's got any money what's going to happen then? It's weird. And another issue is we were supposed to be building the stuff to, save people from manual labor, but we're kind of doing it backwards where the stuff that we've introduced first is getting rid of people's ability to think. So that probably should have been come later. Yeah. I really hope that people are thinking about this rather than just profits. But I mean, history has told us that that's not really how stuff works. People think about making money over the really long term. This looks nicer, but it poisons everybody in the town. Okay, well, whatever. It's sort of like that.
Angie, I want to ask you the same question, but also with the added element of, at the start of the film, in that little, I guess, group huddle, one of the workers basically says, because I think they present this thing how this AI is going to now do all this work. And so the worker says, does that make us redundant? And it's kind of quickly brushed aside with sort of like a canned response. But in that moment, it really does, I think, leave you thinking. So what do you think of this future that is a possibility?
You know, after sending you that podcast yesterday, it really did give me a tiny, tiny bit of hope with the fact that there are organizations right now working to try and pause AI. That's one of the organizations, activist groups, and then there's Stop AI. But in that podcast, they talk about, the benefit of having AI tools and assistants that serve a singular or defined purpose as being very helpful right now. But that's as far as we should go right now. It's probably right around the corner for superintelligence for someone to release it, have it. And then I think things like what you see with therapists wanting to tap into your pod could occur. But I think in that podcast, the speaker mentions, which I'll get his name here in a second, but he mentions the fact that there is something uniquely human about us that regardless of knowing that there is an end of time for each of us, we still tend to wake up each day, do the work we're chartered to do, raise our families, hold hope for what we're doing, and continue forward, which I thought was pretty fascinating that it is true. And it's Dr. Roman, I'm going to Yampolskiy. And he talks about in the podcast as well, leaders like OpenAI, Sam Altman. And if our leaders that are leading this technology and the implementation of it are more concerned with profits over people and policy and governance, we're in trouble. And he actually kind of observes that quite possibly Sam Altman might not have all the characteristics required for such a profound responsibility. But he's only one of many billionaires leading the way. But ultimately, to answer your question, I appreciated the articulation of still having hope, just like in the pod generation. They seem to wake up each day to go do that thing that they love to do and hope for the best at the end of the day and into the next days. So I feel like if we could, in the United States, make certain that governance and compliance and some kind of restrictions are placed, then I would feel a lot better. But for now, it does feel like the wild, wild west, and that might not happen for a while. However, I think it's crucial because otherwise we're in a race to superintelligence that could lead to our extinction, which would, then what? So in the podcast, they talk about what if superintelligence builds a nuclear weapon and then all of our governing and laws don't hold AI accountable. There's no rules about governance or punishment for doing something that nefarious. So we very literally don't have the infrastructure for what's ahead if it keeps going without some kind
Checks
of
and balance.
framework. Yeah, checks and balance. Yep.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
But I am hopeful that we will do the right thing. But
It feels like 50-50 to Angie's point. I feel like there are people that are now being more vocal about like let's be measured and reserved here with these things because we don't know. We're going into unknown territory and we don't know what this is going to look like in the future. However, unfortunately, I think a larger percentage of people are in it for monetary gain, for greed, basically. And so I feel by nature I'm a pessimist. So I feel like the next couple of years are going to be very, very rough. You see it already in the job markets. I think a lot of people have lost jobs. A lot of people have been unemployed for a longer amount of time than normal. And so I don't think that that's going to change. I think we've seen trends where a lot of jobs are offshored. And so we're destroying our workforce. And how can you continue when your people don't have money for basic food and services, right? So what happens now? It's sometimes I wonder at the end of the world, is it going to be a road warrior movie, or is it just going to be something going off quietly into the night? And I think that unfortunately greed will tip the scale and will dictate how the next couple of years look. And I believe that certain people will reap the rewards from this, but I think a larger percentage of people will be hurt. I think the idea of the womb center is a valid one. However, again, with good things, there's also bad things. And I feel like, especially with something like that, you have to be measured and cautious because it opens up like this other can of worms. I think one of the things that I was thinking about after I watched the film was, okay, so basically we're just a farm of creating children, and then what happens to the excess children, right? Do they get harvested for organs? Do they get sold into like maybe sex trafficked situations? Like nobody knows, right? I think because there's like this high price tag associated with, not everyone's going to participate in it, but you're going to have people that have the means to fund weird shenanigans because that's just human nature. I feel like, I think that we'd seen a film a while back. It was called Fresh. And basically it was about this kind of food delivery system where the food being sent to these rich people was actually human meat. And so if you have the money, you can fund it. There's like a scene, there's another film that you and I had seen, Game Night, where it's a comedy, but one of the characters keeps talking about like a fight club, and then it happens in the film, and they basically, rich people are paying poor people to just beat the crap out of each other because they can for amusement. And so you have to think about like what money does to people. Like maybe the intentions were pure at the beginning. Again, the idea of a womb center, especially for people that cannot have children, seems like a great idea. But then what happens when that's taken to the umpteenth level? And again, whether it's harvesting organs for people, maybe somebody is old and just doesn't want to die. Do they get put into like a younger body? Like, who knows, right? Because these are all obviously sci-fi themes in movies, but maybe stuff like that is around the corner from happening. So I think that to Angie's point, I think we all have to be cautious adopters of this stuff, because on the one hand, it might make life easier, but we also have to think about not just ourselves, but how this impacts other people and who it's hurting, because with good things, there's usually bad stuff as well. Number from 1 to 10, if you were going to give the Pod Generation a score.
I'd probably give it a 7.
7. Angie, what do you say? 1 to 10.
I'm the same. I've been teetering between 6 and 7, primarily because the next part of the story, I feel like I wanted a little tiny bit more than just shipping the pod materials back at the end of the movie. But yes, 7. I'll lock in at a 7.
Okay, I'm close. I want to give this an 8. I thought the performances were really good. I thought the idea of the story was really good. I thought the execution was great. It was definitely a thought-provoking film. I think as a parent, I had a tough day yesterday, and I was definitely in my feelings. I think as a human being, I had a lot of feelings about this. As a working woman, I had ideas about this, and just what this all means and what this road that we're now undertaking. Again, there are positives to this story, but there are also negatives. I think in this particular case, Rachel and Alvy have a happy ending with their baby, but at the same time, what other nonsense is going on in this world? And it really is interesting, right? Because I feel like something I forgot to mention before, but this was something else that I was thinking about. When Alvy is with his class, and it was funny, you said this yesterday, you were like, of all the things to grow and share, a fig, is that really what you want to do? Like, yeah. It could be like a juicy apple or something like that, or a nice tangerine or something. So I thought that was funny, but that's also interesting because these kids are growing into this world. They don't know the previous world because that's not what's in front of them, right? And you and I have had this conversation about how, like, when we were young, we were like, get out of the house and don't come back till you hear us yelling at you for dinner. Like now it takes Herculean effort to get my children to go out and touch grass. And that makes me sad. It makes me sad that they're now isolated and growing up in this very detached, sterile, weird world where they're not forming human relationships. They're more in tune with their little computer / phones than they are with making human connections. And
so interestingly, during that scene, I couldn't help but think about this book that I read when my kids were in Montessori school. It's called Last Child in the Woods. And it's very literally about soaking in all of nature and the positive properties that it brings our children, and that we have to save our children from nature deficit disorder is what this book's about.
wow.
And it really is crazy good. It's so good. And I thought about this book when they had that scene, and that he's very literally trying to save the next generation from not having access to such a crucial resource in nature. And then the only other thing I would add is I thought it was really poignant what you mentioned about her productivity at work, and it triggered, maybe there's some tiny connection to the Apple show Severance, where they're very literally trying to sever your internal productivity to your external world. Anyway, I thought it was really good overall, and it makes you want to just go take a walk on a very natural trail and not go home.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah, I think that, and also I think you mentioned it, Angie. The scene about where the AI is telling Rachel, like, "Oh yeah, your productivity is down 25%." I think even the HR woman mentions it, and it's like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to be tracked like this. Like, this really scares me, because there are days as a worker where you're having a great day and you're giving it your all. Sometimes you're giving it more than 100%. And then there are days where you feel like only doing 40%. And that should be your prerogative to do 40%, because I feel like you've put in your time, this, that, and the other thing. Obviously, if you're a surgeon, please be on at 100% all the time. But, for somebody like me, who's a secretary, like, there are days where I can coast on 40%. And so that I find worrisome too, along with the whole, like, are we being made redundant comment? Because it's like, it feels like that is now the world that we're living in, where we're being constantly tagged and monitored for our productivity, because we're only being judged on what we bring to the table, not who we are as a person, right? Especially when you work for larger corporations where you're just a number. You're just the number on your ID badge, right? You're not so-and-so who's X amount years old with X amount children with this background and this whatever. You're just a number. And so...
Yeah. No, nobody cares about how great the sense of humor of the guy who welds the microchip into your iPhone is.
Exactly. They only care about the finished product. So, and again, that ties into this crazy capitalism that we do very extremely in this country, because as much as I love the country, we're all about go big or go home. So there's definitely, even with AI, even with saving us on time and efforts and stuff, I feel like we're not addressing the larger pictures, which, to Angie's point, we're not in touch with nature, which is a sin at this point. We are not talking about our mental health. We are not addressing just the everyday burnout that happens because you're just going. We're not talking about the everyday pull and push of being in a committed relationship with somebody. How do you make love stay? How do you keep in tune with your partner, even when their sensibilities are so different than yours? Like, these are all things that happen to us on the daily, and yet we push it aside because we're so busy trying to keep on that treadmill at our desk as we multitask ourselves to death. It's definitely, I absolutely recommend this. If you haven't seen it, absolutely do yourself a favor and check out 2023's The Pod Generation, rated PG-13. There's nothing objectionable in here. There's maybe one or two cuss words. It's fine though. But I think this storytelling experience lends itself to such amazing conversation because there's really so much to unpack here. There's many layers and nuance to the story because there's a lot going on, much like life. It's messy and it's not linear. It's not easy peasy, living breezy. There's a lot that goes on here. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and that's just the way it is. And I think with the adoption of this technology into our everyday life, we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see things disappear that we thought we would have forever, and then we are going to see things that are going to hopefully help us in the long run. But also, I feel like you have to proceed with caution here as well, because you're giving up your freedom, you're giving up your privacy in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's weird. It is a weird time to be living in. I remember what it's like to have a rotary phone and dial-up cable internet, and we've come
6 channels on the television.
6 channels on the television. Yes, we have come a long way from that kind of living. And I got to be honest, gang, I don't know if it's better. I don't know if it's better. I tell my kids all the time, I wish you could have seen my world. It wasn't crazy amazing, but I have such fond memories of my childhood, even with all the obstacles and compromises and sacrifices that I've made as a young person. I feel like I wouldn't trade it for anything. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the next 20 some odd years pan out, because I feel like we're moving at warp speed into that next phase of whatever is happening. And it's going to be very few the people that control the narrative and the situations, because they have the wealth. The economic disparity that's happening right now is just amazing. The people that are rich are grotesquely rich, and the people that are poor are grotesquely poor and disenfranchised and set aside. So, yeah, let's hope that, to Angie's point, we have true trailblazers that are going to take the mantle for all of humanity and fight that fight. And I know they're out there, and I got my fingers crossed.
They are. I added the podcast, which is from the Diary of a CEO with Dr. Roman. I believe it's Chip. Would you all please pronounce it? You're so much better with enunciation.
Wait, I just opened it too.
What would you guess? I think that sounds perfect.
Yeah. We'll
He's fascinating to listen to.
Yeah, we'll link it too, because I think it's a good one.
Perfect. And I'll send you the title for The Last Child in the Woods.
Yes, please. I was going to say, I meant to take a picture of it when you held it up.
It was initially published like in the early 2000s. So imagine I think they have a quick update on it, and just a fascinating, there are so many fascinating topics from this movie. It will keep you thinking. I would highly recommend it. And I think it does. I think the fact that I saw it 2 years ago and then wanted to see it again, because things have changed so quickly in those 2 years, it's something all of us should be paying attention to at a minimum.
Yeah, agreed.
And diving in where you feel your activist heart might wish to require some governance. So
again, the Pod Generation on Hulu from 2023 from director Sophie Barthes. This clocks in at an hour 50 and is rated PG-13. Again, many love and thanks to our good friend Miss Angie, all the way from the best state with the best barbecue. I will fight anyone that says otherwise. And we'll hopefully see you all soon with another review. And with that, we will bid you all a
good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.